Hello, everyone, and welcome to the CanadianSME Small Business Podcast, your portal to the dynamic universe of small businesses where communities flourish and innovation knows no bounds. I'm your host, Maheen, and today we will be covering a lot about small businesses. Small businesses are not just the foundation of our economies, they are the vibrant heartbeats that sustain us. Their importance goes beyond measure, from shaping local communities to driving global progress. Today, we embark on a journey to celebrate and support these incredible enterprises with Matt Foran. Matt Foran, the visionary behind KnowMeQ, is an adult educator with a career spanning over 20 years in post-secondary education. His roles have ranged from administrator to teacher and researcher. The genesis of KnowMeQ emerged during a design jam convened by the federal government to address the challenges posed by automation, Industry 4.0, and the concept of maximum employment. Matt's deep-rooted understanding of these challenges led to a transformative concept. Now let's explore the journey of KnowMeQ and the role it plays in revolutionizing the labor landscape. Hi, Matt. On behalf of CanadianSME, I'd like to welcome you to our Small Business Podcast.
Pleasure to be here with you today.
How are you?
Great. Wonderful.
Wonderful. Amazing. Now, Matt, let's dive right in. We'd love to learn more about the inspiration behind the KnowMeQ. Could you share the inspiration behind the platform and how its science-validated skills assessment SaaS platform is making a difference in recruitment, in succession planning, and retention efforts for businesses?
Absolutely. And thanks for bringing the background up. It seems like forever ago that I was at the Design Jam in Ottawa and coming together. And this was, of course, pre-pandemic, where the world seemed like it had an infinite amount of potential. And then, as we know, coming through the pandemic, there's been some new challenges which have emerged. But at the time, they were presenting this concept that Ontario and Canada and many jurisdictions had with the concept of maximum employment. Mm. And we're there, arguably right now, most economists would say, where there are more jobs available than there are skilled people to do it, or even people to apply for to work in companies. And this crosses many sectors. So I was at the time sitting from a landscape of working and having worked in education for many years in adult education and literacy and programs that supported employment for marginalized individuals. And I was aware that many of the tools which were being used by recruiters or by companies for selecting people were often leaving people on the margins. Some people were not being considered. And as we look at some of the demographic information that's very present and will be for the next 30 or 40 years in Western economies, where there are more skilled or more aging persons who are in the workforce than there are in the actual post-secondary age. And I realized that these people need to continue to upskill. And when we look at the measures of only looking at one assessment, for instance, that could describe an individual, there's a lot of other things that the person would bring to the table. So the concept then sort of emerged that, what if we brought together some best-in-class assessments that brought together a variety of different measures? They were backed by science and backed by some of the international standards that would bring a broader composite to the skills equation of who an individual is. And so that was the thesis. It ended up winning the Design Jam as a concept. And over the next subsequent months and years, it's never left my head. It's been one of these things. It's been a labor of passion because I think it speaks to a lot of needs right now, and needs for people to continue to have opportunities to grow. And then from a macroeconomic perspective, it's something that we need. We need to have, flourishing hospitals and roads and infrastructure and education, safe societies. We need to have companies who are flourishing. We need to have individuals who are at the core of this, who are flourishing themselves. And at the very essence of what KnowMeQ is, if we think about all of the Qs in the world, there are IQ, of course, and there's EQ, which has been conventionally used for emotional intelligence. I would subscribe to the thesis that the most important Q that an individual could have at their disposal is to know themselves. That's the KnowMeQ. Okay. And so we came up with this idea, with this composite of these skills, but also predicated on the idea that when put together, looking at things through an adaptability lens to be able to see where the person can go. So we measure skills that look at the core skills that are required to do the job, and the skills which are soft skills, which are, how you would participate in a group and thrive or even sustain your job in social situations. Those are fine. But then the adaptability skills also that we measure, and we put these things all together to look at how will the individual survive and thrive in periods of uncertainty, which arguably that's what we're in right now for the next who knows how long. We don't know what's around the corner, and we do know that people need to continue to grow and adapt their skills.
Absolutely. Love the inspiration behind the platform and what it serves. But Matt, talking about skilled labor shortages that can have significant economic impact, how does KnowMeQ contribute to addressing this particular challenge, and what role does it play in helping businesses identify and nurture talent?
A lot of people don't know this, but it's sort of an ugly truth that is very persistent since the mid-1990s, when this was really being picked up across the OECD countries, and there are 30 countries or so in the OECD country list, and Canada and the United States being among them. Approximately 50%, just between 40 and 50% of workers who are in jobs today don't have the functional core literacy, numeracy skills to actually meet the demands of their job. That's 1 in 2 people in any workforce. That means that those persons are probably contributing to higher error rates. Those people are typically locked into jobs, and they're not having the opportunities to grow. And there's also some social determinants of health that are associated with those individuals. People tend to be having positions or experiences where they're struggling, and they're definitely struggling. Those are not fixed skills. And the longer people are out of school traditionally, the more those core skills tend to go down. On an economic perspective, that low literacy, numeracy, and problem solving rate is about $1 trillion problem a year in Canada. And that's multiply that by 10 in the United States. That's a really, really big lost opportunity to be able to say, how can we upskill individuals to be able to help them be a little bit more successful? Because even a modest gain in productivity or efficiencies in those measures will make a massive impact that's sustainable down the field.
Right.
So what we do is identify what the core skills are of individuals. It's important, the old adage is that to know where you want to go, you need to know where you're starting from. So from a company's perspective, they need to know what the skill levels are of their employees. And we measure across those literacy, numeracy, and problem-solving areas. We have social and emotional learning, emotional intelligence, digital competencies that we measure, problem-solving, and adaptability, and personality assessments to be able to say, what's a composite measure of this person? And to be able to say, okay, let's look at that as a company, or is it from an individual's perspective or a team, and to see where are some of the starting places for individuals. And from there can be some interventions that can be brought in for individuals to upskill. There can be some complementary activities that can be used to really tap into this information and say, here's where we're going to focus as a team or on an individual to say, this is where we want to support this person's growth.
Now, you're right, Matt, that, investment for workers, whether it be the lifelong learning or development, are both very vital. Can you elaborate on how KnowMeQ empowers individuals and organizations to invest in their continuous growth and adaptability?
It's a great question. And we're working on a couple of tools right now, AI-based tools, with some post-secondary recognized groups here in Ontario and also in the United States, to be able to bring together post-secondary credential opportunities that are connected to our platform, to bring together. So essentially, as employment and post-secondary have never necessarily swim together in the same swimming pool very well. This is an opportunity to use our tool and to be able to use our relationships with institutions to be able to receive credit for prior learning and prior experience. That's one of the ways that we're supporting that. I think what we aim to do through the work that we do with organizations is to really impress upon organizations that your group of people today may likely be the people who are with you tomorrow. And for many of the groups that we've discussed, had many focus groups and discussions with and worked with in person, they haven't had anyone apply. And this is a lot of the work that we're doing is in manufacturing and supply chain. They haven't had people apply to work at their company forever. And so what do you do when you're that organization? You can try to find that needle in a haystack across regional lines or across states or provincial lines to try to find that one person for that role. Or what we suggest is you have to look at who's on your bench to be able to find opportunities to say, these people have the right skill profile and probably work history. Combine that. Our solution will never replace the experiences of supervisors and that firsthand experience that those people would have. But when combined, I think it's good data to be able to support, to say, okay, let's litmus test skills versus some of our recommender tool solutions to say, here's where that skill gap could be, or here's the connection between this person and that next role. And this is an informed referral or promotion decision. Mm-hmm. And that tends to then lead to opportunities for further discussion, for upskilling, lifelong learning. And then for the companies, they then realize greater retention. And that is the number one challenge for a lot of companies, is to retain workers. The person who leaves an organization for a modest salary ends up costing the company tens of thousands of dollars or more to be able to try to find a person with that skill set, with that institutional knowledge to be able to do that job. And if they're not applying because they don't exist, that's a time that's wasted, that's lost opportunities for contracts for companies, and that's a macro challenge.
Mm-hmm. Now, Matt, as you mentioned, industries like manufacturing and supply chain, they're both facing very acute challenges. Mm-hmm. How does KnowMeQ tailor its solutions to meet the specific needs of these sectors? And what successes have you witnessed in these domains?
We've been really fortunate. KnowMeQ has been really fortunate to work in Canada with Engine, which is an advanced manufacturing supercluster group, and they represent the advanced manufacturing sector here in this country. And so we've been working with them to develop out a platform, a worker skills platform. Engine really has the finger on the pulse of manufacturing in Canada and has a lot of the industry voice that would inform some of the challenges, whether it's labor or if it's about skill, and as these play out as in local domestic challenges or regional challenges, but as there's a challenge for us to be able to export our goods, manufacturing goods. So we have been able to include our products within that platform and to be able to be part of this national skills challenge. And that work, we're hopeful that work will continue, and the government group who is funding this work has seen value in this work, and it's been a tremendous opportunity to see this support of this project and this work that the federal government is committed. And I think that we are onto something that will be a very, really great made in Canada solution, which will have a positive impact globally.
Absolutely. There's no doubt that this is very resourceful, and we wish you and KnowMeQ both continued success. Now, Matt, what impact does functional literacy and numerical skills have on our company's performance and growth, and how KnowMeQ's assessments, because you specifically mentioned some assessments before as well, how do these help companies identify and bridge these skill gaps?
Great question. When we think about the skills and competency sort of frameworks, skills themselves are basically are they're scaffolded, and if you think about the ability to do something more complicated, it's generally built on more simple skills that sort of came before that. So if you were a chef, before you can do all sorts of knife tricks and stuff, you need to really understand the basics of cutting and so on, and knife safety and what kinds of knives to use and so on. When we break things down from a skills perspective and we look at the really core fundamental challenges that are present within functional skills like numeracy or literacy, and literacy being, of course, principally reading. Reading skills is really the most important measure for that skill. They are based on very, very core principles of reading and decoding text and being able to do that. And that reads that. Then when you can understand that, then you can better understand inferencing and those different principles of as you go up the ladder with those things. Inferencing then can lead to critical thinking and problem solving and so on. When we're looking at these assessments that we have, some of the skills as we move further down are what we consider sort of cross-cutting skills, and skills that have numeracy, problem solving, digital skills into one experience. And so when it's an unfair expectation for an employer or for anybody to expect that someone who has poor core skills to be able to do something very, very abstract. It's just really not in that person's capacity presently. But with some focused attention and on those skills, those things can improve. And an exposure to new environments can also increase those opportunities for persons to improve skills. Now, it's not to present individuals with lower skills as being incapable of doing their physical demands of their job, but it could be manifesting itself into experiences where putting them putting an individual in the line with a more complicated CNC machine or 3D printing machine where you have to design things, that those skills probably aren't there. Mm-hmm. You have to focus on those things and then work up is generally the way that it would work. And for our working population, we have a lot of aging workers who don't have digital skills. They didn't grow up in a digital environment. We have people with language and literacy challenges in newcomers to the country, of people who've been in this country who've been working in jobs for many years who didn't have secondary school or post-secondary schools, but they have great work ethic. We need to find opportunities to be able to sharpen some of those skills so that they can ladder up and create new skill sets downstream so that they can become even more valuable to their company and their family and their community.
Right. Well, thank you, Matt, for laying this across in a very step-by-step guide manner, for our listeners today. But as we wrap up our conversation today, and as an advocate for lifelong learning and development, what advice do you have for small businesses looking to foster a culture of continuous improvement within their teams, drawing from KnowMeQ's expertise?
I think that there's a one of the unfortunate experiences that I think became present within the pandemic was that I think we forgot about people a lot, and I think a lot of companies and in specific industries hadn't invested in their employees, and so there was, going through 2021 and 2022, there was what was coined the quiet resignation, quiet quitting, and so on. And those were, especially acute in hospitality sector jobs where people were leaving because there wasn't a lot of employment opportunities, things were shutting down. But it was also because I think unfortunately, and I've had many experiences working in hospitality myself, but there wasn't a lot of investment in individuals. And I think that was something that when employees from that sector were reflecting on their opportunities for continued growth or opportunity, they maybe didn't see themselves having had the investment from their sector or their company, and so despite efforts by great groups like OTAC, the Ontario Tourism Education Corporation, to continue to provide opportunities for training for unemployed workers in that sector, many people did leave. Mm-hmm. So I think what we can't lose sight of is that we need everybody. This economy needs everybody working. We are in a globally competitive market for every sector. And if we do want to live in this great country and thrive and have a safe community that has roads and opportunities for everyone and for future generations, we need to be investing in workers. We need to be investing in workers' futures And when we invest in workers and their opportunities to upskill and move beyond to get unglued from the roles that they were in before, that creates a tremendous amount of potential for the organization. And those organizations then invest in communities. They have the ability to help communities thrive. And that is what we need to do. We need to spread out the opportunity for companies to support communities through their activities, and that comes down to the supporting workers on a one-on-one level. It's a culture of continuous lifelong learning, and lifelong learning isn't just for the C-suite people. It's not just for the senior vice presidents or managers. It's for every person in the organization, and that is a culture that I think we need to adopt. And I would suggest as a challenge to Canadian businesses out there that other countries are investing more per person than Canadian companies are. Right. And we need to be competitive, we need to be investing on par or more with each of our workers.
Thank you so much, Matt, for first of all shedding light on the transformative journey of KnowMeQ and its profound impact on labor, on education, and on the small business landscape. Thank you so much for your time.
Pleasure to be here.
And thank you so much for providing such invaluable insights to our audience today.
Wishing everyone very, very great success in this year and the year ahead.
Absolutely. As we wrap up today's episode, I'd like to extend our gratitude to Matt Foran. And a special thank you to our partners who champion small businesses every day. We appreciate our exclusive banking partner, RBC, our trusted shipping partner, UPS, and our dedicated accounting software partner, Xero. To our listeners, remember that every small business is a seed of potential waiting to bloom. Support them, nurture them, and together we can cultivate a thriving ecosystem of innovation and growth. Until next time, stay inspired and stay tuned for more enlightening conversations in the world of small businesses. This is your host, Maheen, signing off.